Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is David Talbot, Managing Director and Head of Research at Red Cloud Securities. I'm delighted to host Red Cloud webinar on uranium today. We will hear from Encore Energy Management, including Paul Goranson, CEO, and Bill Sheriff, Executive Chairman. During today's webinar, they will provide an overview and outlook. Then we will take some questions. You can type the questions into the chat box at any time, and we'll get to as many as we can. But before we kick things off, first we need to discuss the fine print. During this Encore Energy presentation, forward-looking statements may be made. I would direct listeners to their forward-looking statements outlined on page 2 of their presentation, and that can be found on the company website, encoreenergycorp.com. For Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I'd highlight this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or recommendation to buy and sell securities. We note that this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigation, seek their own professional advice before investing. Please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures on Encore Energy. But before Paul and Bill step up, I would like to say a couple words. First of all, a plug for our upcoming uranium conference. It's on Thursday, May 13th. We will have presentations from 18 different uranium companies, including Encore, plus a keynote address from Grant Isaac, CEO of Cameco, and I will host a fireside chat with 3 of the largest uranium investment firms, Sachem Cove, Segra, and L2. Attendees can register at redcloudfs.com for that conference. Just getting into it here, the nuclear industry, I believe, is in pretty good shape, and I think the outlook is even better. And we should see some trickle down into the uranium sector here, but really we've seen low prices get in the way. Now, that said, uranium demand does continue to rise. Government support is increasing, particularly in the US, China, and Russia. Uranium is getting recognition as a green energy source, and China is on track to become the largest nuclear power producer. Uranium supply has been falling. There have been significant mine curtailments, and COVID-19 impact was severe. But with a decade of low prices, we have not seen the investment necessary to sustain production levels, and those utilities that have been sitting on the sidelines will ultimately have to buy uranium to feed their power plants. I believe the nuclear industry is even stronger than it was pre-Fukushima. There's 443 reactors in operation. That's the same number as 10 years ago. Global uranium demand is 177 million pounds and growing between 2.5% and 3% per year. There are 53 reactors under construction. China plans to triple its nuclear capacity by 2030, and that will put China about 50% ahead of the US right now. India plans 21 new reactors by 2031. Japan is still targeting 20 to 22% nuclear power, and there are several countries entering the sector. United Arab Emirates, for example, just started 3 reactors recently, and they've got 4 more planned. And you've got several more countries coming down the road. Russia, for example, does a great job as being a one-stop shop for many countries going nuclear. It helps these countries with their regulations, funding, construction, even provides the fuel and the waste handling. And about 1/3 of all nuclear reactors in the world are being built by Russia. The US is building a couple of new reactors, and they still maintain 20% of its electricity from nuclear power. What has changed in the world is that the world is now focusing on lower greenhouse gas emissions. And there's only 2 ways to do that with baseload power: hydro and nuclear. If you look at Biden's recent White House fact sheet on his $2 trillion infrastructure plan, he made it clear that American hydro and nuclear need to be leveraged. And this could include use of small modular reactors or advanced reactors. Uranium production has declined to about 123 million pounds last year, and that leaves about a 55 million pound gap between supply and demand. I think McArthur River was a shock to the system when it closed because people saw that as a large mine, presumed it was low cost. But when that was the announcement on that, essentially uranium prices dropped $2 per pound that day, and that's really the 10th time that uranium prices have moved such an amount over the past 15 years. We have seen major operations come offline: McArthur, Rabbit, in Cameco, in Cameco's operations in Canada, Cominac in Niger, Ranger in Australia. In Kazakhstan, we've seen Akdala and Zreknoy close as well. Almost everything in the U.S. is also offline. So, uranium production dominated by just a few mines. The top 10 mines produced 55% of all uranium in 2019. And that's even scarier when you start considering jurisdiction. Uranium is produced only in 14 countries, and 7 of those countries produce 94% of all uranium. Kazakhstan, Canada, Australia, Namibia, Uzbekistan, Niger, and Russia are the main producers. So bottom line here, with disinvestment in the uranium sector, there has been a lack of exploration and discoveries, and new mines will be needed in coming years to replace old mine closures, let alone cover the growth and demand. So that's a good segue on how Encore Energy can help solve this problem.